as people continue to kind of move in, I think we'll be able to start. We have just a half hour with you today, so we wanted to welcome you all to the Alliance for Water Efficiency and the Water Research Foundation, our webinar on the residential end uses of water, version 3. So welcome to our webinar. We're using Teams today, as you can see. We will be hosting this webinar for 30 minutes. This webinar is currently being recorded, so the slides and the recording will be available afterward. We'll send an email out to all of the attendees letting you know it's available. We are encouraging you to ask questions. So if you'll see at the top of your screen, there's a lot of different Teams icons. You can use the little chat bubble and type your questions in there. Or if you see a couple over, it says Q&A. If you put your questions in either of those spaces, we'll be able to kind of keep up with that, either typing out our answers throughout the webinar or answering at the end. So stick around for your chances at the end, okay? So I'm gonna give it over to Liesl and Sydney, and we'll move on. Wait, Liesl, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Liesl Hans. I'm the Director of Programs here at the Alliance for Water Efficiency. My background's in water utilities and local government, facilitation, and research. And so we're very excited that AW is co-hosting this webinar with the Water Research Foundation. So I'll be sharing a little bit about the past, the history of these projects, and the role they've played in the work that we and our members do. And then Sydney from WRF will be sharing all about the next version of the study and how you can get involved. And Sydney Samples is a research program manager at the Water Research Foundation. She received her master's degree in international environmental policy with a specialization in natural resource policy and management from Middlebury Institute. And so at WRF, she manages a whole variety of cool projects, including topics like water supply planning, algal blooms, affordability, innovation, and of course, this new project, the residential end uses of water, version 3. So first, we're going to share just a bit about our two organizations, and then we'll jump into today's topic. Next slide, please. The Alliance for Water Efficiency is a nonprofit stakeholder-based organization, and we really work to advance kind of 3 areas of effort. So collaboration, really bringing folks together across all of our different types of members, from water providers to governments to business and industry and beyond. We work to advance and create knowledge. So whether that's helping people connect with the research and information that's out there, or helping contribute and directly create new research that we can all use to advance our efforts. And then finally, change. So a variety of ways that we go about doing that, but largely through policy advocacy, legislative advocacy, advancing partnerships and advocating for all sorts of things that our members and others need to advance the work that we're doing. Next slide, please. And if Sydney, you want to talk a little bit about WRF?
Yeah, the Water Research Foundation is a One Water nonprofit that is subscriber-based. Really, our purpose is to advance the science of water to improve the quality of life for all communities. And our vision is to have the science and knowledge that we generate allow the water sector to provide high quality, safe, accessible, and affordable water services, so that we can have healthy, resilient communities and have a sustainable global environment. Next slide.
Thanks, Sydney. So again, we're super excited about this work that's happening here, and AW is serving on the project advisory committee, and just want to share a little bit about why this work is important from AW's perspective, and I think many of our members' perspective. So WRF has sponsored several studies over the years related to trends in water use in the residential sector. The first, and other sectors, of course, commercial and industrial, has been focused too. But in terms of residential, the very first study of this dates back to 1999, and then there was a comprehensive update of that with version 2 and released in 2016. And so they've sponsored research also on the multifamily side, but not necessarily down to the end use level that the single family residential studies have done. So next slide, please. Here are just a few graphics illustrating the type of data that's come out of these studies, including average daily indoor water use per person by end uses, as well as at a per household scale. And you can see each of the major end uses that they focused on. And this graphic also shows the differences from the 1999 study to the 2016 study. So it'll be very exciting to have another set of data points showing 23, 24, whatever it ends up being, data points. Next slide, please. Version 2 also looked at a couple of additional things like average daily hot water to help address the water energy nexus and understanding the opportunity to save energy by reducing water demands. There's also a section looking at outdoor water use and revealed things like there's a lot of households, at least in the study, that are actually deficit irrigators, meaning they underwater compared to what might be expected, but shows that there's a smaller portion of households that are very largely excessive irrigators. So it underscores what we're all doing in this field of understanding that it's really important to dig into the data and really be targeted and customized about the strategies that you put out there and really trying to work with the customers that have the potential for the savings rather than a blanketed approach across all of your water users. Last slide, or next slide. And then here's a map. Sydney will talk more about different participation levels later, but this is who participated last time around, and we're hoping through today's webinar and ongoing discussions that you'll consider participating too. It's really important that we have a good diversity across geographies and climates, different types of water systems and different types of sort of economic and demographic situations. So we're really excited that you're interested and are here to listen and learn more. Next slide, please. So we at AW love these studies, and we know our water utility members and others love these studies. In my previous role at Fort Collins Utilities, we were a participant in the past projects, and we really loved having the specific data about our service area. It was an invaluable resource and data set, and also just a great project to be part of and to be sponsoring, and it helped advance a lot of conversations in our service area and in our communities. It's important to have this data over time as well, and it really just helps everybody understand what we're currently experiencing and seeing in terms of water use trends, what we might be expecting in the future, seeing what that trend line is moving out in terms of what the future might look like, how to better incorporate this information into demand planning and rates planning, so that we're just expecting, understanding the information better and planning better for the future, as well as in general, just helping us to better understand what the opportunities are for water conservation and efficiency moving forward, and where our strategies might and our efforts might be best placed. So that's why we're excited about AWE. So from here, I'm going to turn it over to Sydney to talk more about the next version, version 3.
Thanks, Liesl. So that brings us to today and why there is a continued need for residential end use research. As Liesl said, some of the most recent work we've done was in 2016. A lot of that data was from 2010, 2011. And so we're seeing there really is a need to update. We've had growing populations, imperiled supplies, climate change, really. So over 10 years, there has been a change. And on top of that, with the multifamily side, and a lot of your hard to reach populations being in multifamily housing, then you have the added components of affordability challenges and housing demographic changes that are really going to allow us to extend the reach of this research, but also expand the need for the research. So, and then lastly, everyone's doing conservation practices now. They're really great. And programs like this, research like this, allows us to see how successful are they being, where are there opportunities for further investment in the programs. Next slide. So our version 3 will be officially launched next week. WRF has committed $600,000, which is really great. It's more than our last study. And what is really interesting and exciting about this study is that instead of being only single family, which was the 1999 and 2016 study, this is also going to have a multifamily component to it, which I will get into now. So next slide, please. So for our project objectives, we have 4. The first is to evaluate changes in the disaggregated water uses in single family households and then establish a baseline for multifamily households. And we're going to do this by collecting current data from sites that statistically represent their service areas and analyzing the data to identify variations in water used by each fixture. So when you think of the single family side of the 2016 study, the data collected, we're going to ideally hope for the same thing. So we want to be able to evaluate the changes, but we're also going to be looking at it from the multifamily household side as well, which moves into our second objective, which is to evaluate the differences and similarities between single family and multifamily households and between different types of multifamily households. So we're going to acknowledge right now that there are a lot of different types of multifamily households. And while I can't tell you exactly which types are going to be compared in this study, because we're going to leave that up to the proposer, we can say with certainty that there are going to be different types of multifamily housing so that you can get a better understanding based off of diversity. And so we're also hoping to be able to compare just generally the multifamily to single family to remove some of the assumptions that we know utilities have to make right now because they only have the single family data. So it's kind of the unique element of this. Next slide, please. Then we move to our third and fourth objectives, which are to then compare the results from this study with past studies. So like Liesl said, they have 1999 to 2016 results. We want to be able to add this 2025, 2026 study to it so that we can have a really good picture of how have things changed over time. There's likely some other studies that we're going to incorporate that other entities outside of WRF have done. And so we can really get this picture of how has water use changed over time, specifically within kind of the last 15 to 20 or so years. And then another element, because we've added the multifamily household component, is just at a very high level, how has housing class composition changed over the last 15 years? This will be a high level, but we're hoping that in the future, maybe we'll be able to do some further equity and DE&I type work based off of the knowledge that we gain from this project. Next slide, please. So I do want to really point out the differences between 4309, which is that 2016 study, and our current one. So both studies are going to have kind of the bread and butter of the last two, which is going to have your single family household end use. So you're still going to have all the disaggregated, really great data that you've wanted. And it's going to be compared to previous studies to continue to evaluate the trends. But there's a couple of things that we are not going to be doing in order to add some new components. So this version is not going to have disaggregated outdoor usage. So we're not going to be looking at the theoretical irrigation requirement, end use in total. It's going to be a very, very small component, limited outdoor analysis, mostly to gather total outdoor usage, because we want to spend our resources in a different area. And the chapters specifically on modeling and forecasting are going to be either much smaller or not a part of it. That's just not the emphasis on this one, because as I was saying, we really want to add multiple layers of multifamily household data. So we want to be able to bring more of those resources that were spent on outdoor in the past over to multifamily, and not just have one type of multifamily, but to be able to get gather insights on some of the diversity that exists within that type of household. And then additionally, there's going to be kind of that high level composition study on housing class. So those are kind of the big differences between this study. So your bread and butter is going to be the same. You're going to have that really good single family household data. But in comparison in this one, you're also going to be able to have some of that same information, but on the multifamily side. So move to the next one, which is probably what you're thinking. How do I get involved? Who was involved last time? So there were 26 utilities along with AWE that participated in the 2016 study. We had 9 participate as level 1 participants and 14 participate as level 2. And so what that looked like in the past was level 1 contributed billing data, and then approximately 1,000 homes participated in a mail survey, and then 100 homes did end use monitoring. And then we had 14 homes or 14 utilities participate and as level 2 participants. So they just did billing data from 1,000 homes, and then they did mail surveys to about a little over 300 of their customers. And while I can't guarantee that participation is going to be the same, technology has changed. There's different ways to gather customer surveys, things like that. We anticipate similar volunteer opportunities as version 2, just because last time we did have 23 utilities that participated in the billing data. And so you're able to really get a better picture if you have kind of a variety of different ways for utilities to participate. So within that, I would anticipate having one area of the utilities who want to participate in this end-use monitoring analysis again. So that's going to be, you want your utility to know the disaggregated data for single family, multifamily, potentially subsets that are looking at, like the last study, they did 10 homes, did hot water analysis. So very specific things that we might pick out from the proposer. That's all going to be on utilities who want to participate in the end use monitoring side. And to some extent, that will 100% be a part of the project. So we know that that will be a volunteer opportunity. We anticipate, though, that there'll also be another way for utilities to participate who maybe don't have the funds to participate on that side, or maybe just have some of their own data on that side, but want to participate in the study in another way, which is where we see some type of customer household and characteristic analysis coming in. And so that's where we envision that there'll be another option for utilities to play who maybe don't want to do the monitoring side. At this stage of the game, you do not need to know which one you want to do. You'll see this QR code. If you were to scan it, it will bring you to WRF's website where you can volunteer to be a utility participant. Really, you just are putting your name and your contact information so that any proposer who downloads our RFP will have your contact information. So when they start to develop their plan, they'll tell you what are the different opportunities. And so it's there that then you would really need to decide how you want to participate. But at this stage, you don't need to know. You just need to know if you want to participate. And if you do, I would highly recommend you signing up now. I will say the earlier you sign up, the more likelihood that proposers are going to see your name. So this RFP will be released next week, next Tuesday, so exactly a week. And we will have every utility that has signed up prior to that on our RFP. So when someone downloads it for the first time, they will have your contact information. Now, let's say you want to sign up, you need to talk through it, talk to your team, see if this is something that you can logistically pull off. You have time. We will update, I believe it's every 2 to 3 days, our RFP. So if 3 weeks from now you get the go ahead, you can absolutely still put your name on the list and we will add you, and proposers will be able to reach out to you. And we do encourage proposers, I think it says it on our site when we release it, to continually refresh and come back to the proposer or proposal, because even though the RFP itself won't change, I won't go through and change the objectives or anything like that. We will regularly update our list. That way, anyone who decides that they want to participate later on still has the opportunity to raise their hand. Next slide, please. So as I was saying, upcoming dates, RFP is going to be released on September 11th, and this RFP is going to have a December 12th due date. It's really, you have any time between now and then to raise your hand. Again, the earlier the better. So September, October, that's when proposers are really going to be developing the meat of their plan. So I would say that's probably a good goalpost. But if you can't find out till November, I'd still encourage you to raise your hand, sign up just in case. And then just kind of orient yourself. I would say I would anticipate project kickoff probably sometime late summer or early fall of 2024. And to keep an eye out, we currently have this on advance notice on our website. And then on the 11th, you'll be able to find the actual RFP on our open RFPs slide. And next slide. So that's going to be kind of my wrap up. I do have my QR code here. So if you have any follow-up questions after this, feel free to shoot me an email. Happy to talk with you about logistics, or if you have any additional questions that you're not ready to talk about here, I am available. But with that, I think we're ready to open it up to the floor.
Thanks, Sydney. Rachel, what have we gotten in for questions so far?
I have seen there were a couple that just came in. I think you've already answered this in saying this is really just to raise your hand. But do you need to know the unit numbers associated with the MF meters in order to participate?
I think that would. So if it's like last time, if we're comparing it to the single family household numbers, if you're participating in the metering and you're doing household characteristics, you would need to be able to have some type of identifier. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the true unit number. So if it's like 103A, for example, but if we were able to meter them and have the survey and collectively agree that that's going to be number 13, that would be fine. I think that's what you're asking.
I'm wondering, Sydney, I wonder if Jessica's asking, like, if you have, a lot of multifamily are master metered, which is why this is such a cool study that will actually get past that. Do you need to know for like a multifamily dwelling, building, do you need to know how many units are in that building? Like have that data. Some utilities have that data really wonderfully outlined in their billing data and some don't. So do you know more about that yet?
We don't. I do think some of that is going to have to pull in the apartment complex or whoever owns the property. In the housing characteristics portion of it, we're going to want to be able to identify that. But I would say at this level, if you don't know that, that is absolutely okay. We can work out logistics later.
Great. And then do you have a sense at this point of the process, a sense of the time commitment for these participating utilities, maybe perhaps based on past studies?
I don't. And I think one of the big differences between this study and the last study is the technological advancement that's happened. So in the last study, they had to go in and physically place meters on any, or the data loggers on all the meters. That may not be the type of technology that's chosen this time. And so I think that could greatly impact the time commitment and might actually reduce some of the commitment if we're able to utilize more meters and things like that that are actually out there. So I'm sorry that until we see what kind of research approach is proposed, I won't know for sure.
Right.
Sydney, would it be fair to say that at a minimum, it would be around, data sharing and data collecting with potential for some back and forth in terms of like data cleaning and making sure the researchers understand, and then depending on what level they're participating in or the research approach that you mentioned, potential for help in recruiting households if they're participating in some end use monitoring? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I would say some type of level 2 participation is going to have less time commitment than if you want to have end use monitoring.
Can you give some examples of what information is needed? So you talked about at-home testing, surveys, AMI data. Is there anything else that we're missing?
Yeah, so great question. This is one thing, again, that is going to really go down to the proposer. So we are specifically calling out that we want individual household data characteristics defined, but we want to allow a lot of flexibility. The last time this was really through a lot of surveying, and then also some data collection from the utility, from billing data, things like that. So we anticipate that there'll probably be some of those similar aspects. But whether or not AMI data and specifically what type of home testing is used is going to really be up to the proposer.
Are there any other questions?
I was just going to say, like, some utilities that participated last time had AMI data and some did not. And I don't know that the AMI data was specifically incorporated in that study, at least at that point in time, but could be, I guess, depending on the proposers this time around.
I'm not seeing any other questions at this time.
Great. Well, Sydney, do you want to reiterate next steps for folks who want to get involved, and then we could call it a day?
Yeah. So next steps is to decide as a utility if you're interested in participating in this project. You don't need to know how. You don't even need to know for certain if you can 100% guarantee that your utility is invested, because I acknowledge that some of it is going to depend on what the proposer puts forward. But if you'd like to hear from the proposers, because you do think to some capacity you want to be involved, then the next step is to sign up on our form. You can go to WRF and click on our get involved, or scan this link and it will take you there. But I recommend signing up. The RFP again will be released next Tuesday, but you have until December 12th December 12th is when it closes. So realistically, November is probably about the latest that you want to put your name on there, just because if you are going to volunteer, I want you to have the best opportunity and best chance of your name being seen. And yes, if you have follow-up questions, feel free to email me. I'm happy to set up a one-on-one call to address any specific questions or concerns that you have. And yes, Alice, you should be able to take your name off of the list if you don't want to do what a proposer says. This is not a guarantee that you're going to participate. It's just raising your hand saying, I'm interested, tell me more. So that's kind of the stage that we're at now. Once you do decide that you want to be on a proposal and submit your letter of intent, that's when kind of you're locking yourself in, but we're nowhere near that stage right now. This truly is just, I'm interested, please tell me more.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Sydney, for sharing about this very exciting project, and we're happy to be participating in it, and we're excited to see lots of utilities hopefully raise their hands and get a good diversity across the different geographies and climates. And so if you have questions, feel free to follow up. We put the emails will be in the slides, and they're also in the chat. And Rachel, you'll send out the recording when it's available, and looking forward to seeing what comes of this, and it's an exciting road ahead. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Yes, everyone, thank you. And you can expect the slides and the video shortly.
Thank you.